Okay, let's unpack this. We're diving into something really creative today, world building, the art and craft of it.
Yeah. And we've got a good set of sources here, some notes, a pretty detailed guide, all focused on, well, how to do it.
Right. So our mission for this deep dive is basically to use this material to figure out what world building actually is.
And maybe more importantly, why people get into it, why you might want to.
Yeah, and crucially, how you can actually start building your own world. We're going to use these sources as like our roadmap.
Okay, so definition first. The material kicks off saying, look, world building is simply the creative act of making up a fictional setting.
But what's cool is the range they point out immediately. It could be massive, epic fantasy, multiple continents, deep history.
Or it could be super focused, like just the weird rules of one specific, maybe slightly creepy town.
Exactly. And a really key point they make right up front.
You don't need a finished product.
Right. No finished novel needed, no game campaign ready. You don't even need an audience.
hmm The sources are clear. You can just do it for the fun of it, for the joy of creating.
Which leads perfectly into the next big question the sources tackle. Why even bother? Why build worlds?
Well, one huge reason that comes up is how much it can boost other creative things you're doing.
Like what?
Like maybe you write fiction, or you design video games, or you're a visual artist.
Or even teaching. They
Yeah.
mention using it to make lessons more engaging.
Exactly. World building gives you that solid foundation, that context for whatever else you're making.
It's also shown as this way to, explore big ideas, properly dig into them.
Yeah, because when you invent a society, you kind of have to think about, well, how does their economy function?
What's their politics? Why are their cities located there?
What do they believe? What shapes their culture? It forces some pretty deep thinking, often about real-world stuff, too.
Yeah, and there's a personal angle as well, isn't there? The sources suggest it can be, almost like a mental escape.
Definitely. A refuge, maybe? Or sometimes like a mirror reflecting your own thoughts, your subconscious.
A place to work through questions, maybe?
Could be, yeah. And the sources say it doesn't matter if you keep it totally private, like your own personal mythology, or if you build it specifically to share later.
Both are valid.
Totally valid approaches.
I also like the point that you don't actually need some grand justification.
No, just being curious, just that sense of wonder.
Mm.
That's enough. That's a perfectly good reason to start building.
Okay, but there's a flip side, right? The sources bring up a potential pitfall.
Ah, yes. The procrastination engine. World building can become that.
You get so lost designing, I don't know, the intricate tax code of the third moon.
Or perfecting the genealogy of some minor noble family.
Yeah.
And you never actually write the story or run the game.
Right. And the advice there seems to be know your goal, be honest about why you're doing it.
Exactly. If the goal is the finished thing, the novel, the campaign, then the world building needs to serve that. Don't let it become the end in itself, unless,
Unless the world building is the goal.
right, if you just love building the world for its own sake, then, hey, embrace the spreadsheets.
Okay, so moving on. There's this idea of balance that comes up a lot in the material, the balance between research and just pure creativity.
Yeah, the argument is that the best, most believable worlds often borrow heavily from our world. They're not made in a total vacuum.
Makes sense. And the guide actually points to specific fields as being like treasure troves for ideas.
Oh yeah, anthropology, understanding culture, rituals, taboos, why people do what they do.
Linguistics, how language works, evolves, creates divisions, dialects, slang.
Ecology, geography, super fundamental. Climate, terrain, ecosystems. That explains why creatures are the way they are, or where a city would realistically thrive or struggle.
And then history and philosophy for the big picture stuff, how ideas spread, how empires rise and fall, how religions form.
But, and this is important, the material stresses you don't need a PhD in any of this stuff.
No, God, no. It's more about curiosity, right? Looking at the real world like a big box of Legos you can remix.
Exactly. Remixing reality. But there's nuance here too, isn't there?
Yes. The guide makes a really great point that sometimes emotional truth beats scientific accuracy.
Right. A world that feels right emotionally can be more powerful than one that's perfectly, rigorously realistic according to physics or history.
You might bend the rules a bit if it serves the story or the mood you're going for.
The research is there to inspire and ground things, not put your creativity in a straitjacket.
So let's zoom out. What are the actual benefits you get from doing this, even if nobody else ever sees your world?
Well, the sources list quite a few. First off, just the learning aspect is huge. It's naturally interdisciplinary.
You end up learning bits of history, economics, science, culture, language.
Without even really trying sometimes. It just happens as you solve problems in your world.
It's also fantastic training for your creative muscles, isn't it?
Totally. You're constantly thinking about narrative, about keeping things consistent, about coming up with original ideas.
And there's an emotional insight aspect, too, by creating fictional people and societies.
You start to understand real human behavior better. Different values, different motivations. It can even clarify your own beliefs.
Yeah, it becomes a form of self-expression, reflecting your own stuff.
Plus, it's constant problem solving. You're always asking, what if? How does this magic system affect trade? What happens if these two cultures clash?
It builds logic skills, systems thinking. You have to make things work, but also figure out how they might break down believably.
And that systems thinking part, understanding how everything connects the sources, highlight that as really valuable.
How so?
Well, that skill applies way beyond fiction. Thinking about interconnectedness is useful in design, in education, even in, community planning, how one change can ripple through a whole system.
Okay, this all sounds really compelling. But, practically, how do you start? Where does the rubber meet the road?
Right. And the good news here, according to the material, is that the barrier to entry is super low.
You don't need fancy software.
Nope. A basic notebook works fine. Or just some sketches on scrap paper. Bullet points.
Collecting images, maybe, like a Pinterest board or just a folder of screenshots.
Absolutely. Anything that captures a feeling or an idea.
And you don't have to have the whole universe figured out on day one.
Right. Not at all. The guide talks about different approaches. You could go top down, start with the big picture, continents, empires.
Or bottom up, start really small. One village, one tavern, maybe just one interesting character and build out from there.
Yeah, build in layers. Add complexity only when you need it or when you get inspired to.
They also had some neat tips on perspective, like try writing a journal entry as someone living in your world.
I like that. Yeah, it forces you to think of the everyday details, stuff you'd miss from a God's eye view.
Or pretending you're discovering artifacts from your world, bits of maps, diary pages, newspaper clippings, makes it feel more tangible.
Okay, so you start generating ideas.
Yeah.
How do you keep track of it all? Organization.
Right. The sources cover a whole range of tools, both old school analog and digital.
Analog is anything physical, really. Notebooks, sketchbooks, index cards, maybe.
Cork boards with pins and string. I could see that. Even making physical crafts based on the world.
Yeah. And then digitally, you've got specialized wiki software like World Anvil.
Or more flexible tools like Notion or Obsidian where you can link ideas together.
Pinterest for mood boards, map-making software like Incarnate or Wonderdraft.
Even AI tools now, right? For brainstorming names, generating images, stuff like that.
For sure. But the crucial point they make is don't get hung up on the tool.
It's not about having the right software.
No, it's about finding what works for you, what keeps you excited, and lets you get your ideas down without friction.
So you've got your tools, you're ready to build. What do you actually build? What are the elements?
The guide lists the common stuff. Geography, maps, obviously, cities, architecture, politics, laws, religions, rituals.
Magic systems, technology levels, economics, trade routes, creatures, plants, unique biomes.
Languages, names, maybe even gestures, histories, myths, key events that shape the world. It's a lot.
But the material strongly emphasizes you do not have to build all of that.
Please don't try. Yeah, pick what genuinely interests you. If you love designing monsters, start there. If you love political intrigue, focus on that.
Let the rest emerge later, if and when it becomes relevant to the parts you actually care about.
And I like the idea they brought up of slice-of-life world building, too.
Oh, yeah? What's that?
It means your world doesn't have to be grand-scale fantasy or sci-fi. It could be the intricate social rules of just one neighborhood.
Or like the subculture around a specific hobby. Or even a weird, maybe dystopian workplace.
Exactly. Those smaller-scale worlds can be just as deep and fascinating to explore.
How do you spark those initial ideas, though, if you're staring at a blank page?
The sources suggest asking questions, but not just visual ones. Ask questions rooted in culture and values.
Okay, like instead of, what does the castle look like?
Ask something like, what's the most vital resource here, and how does everyone's life revolve around getting it?
Ooh, that's good. Or, what do people in this society genuinely fear, and what do they celebrate?
How does power really work? behind the official titles? What are the unspoken rules, the taboos?
What festivals do they have? What historical myths or, like, convenient lies do they tell themselves?
Yeah, questions like that. They generate ideas from the inside out, from the cultural core.
Okay, last big area, making it sustainable. World building can feel huge, maybe overwhelming. How do you keep going without burning out?
Good question. The sources have some solid practical tips for this.
First one seems to be, don't bite off more than you can chew.
Exactly. Don't try to build everything at once. Focus on one small thing at a time.
Like, just figure out one holiday, or write one short folk tale from your world.
Or detail one specific location, like that tavern we mentioned. Finish that one small piece before moving on.
Also build it for yourself first.
Yes, big one. Don't worry about an audience initially. That pressure can stifle the fun. Let it be your private playground first.
And maybe most importantly, let go of perfectionism.
Oh, absolutely crucial. Your world will have contradictions. It will have messy bits you haven't figured out. That's okay.
You can fix them later. Or maybe the contradictions are actually interesting.
Right. Don't let the need for everything to be perfectly consistent stop you from creating. Let it evolve with you.
And they specifically mention celebrating the small wins.
Yeah. Finished a sketch, named a few characters, wrote a paragraph about a ritual, acknowledge that, pat yourself on the back. It keeps the momentum going.
Okay, so let's try and pull the main threads together from this deep dive. What are the big takeaways from the sources?
Well, I think the first is that world building is really accessible. Anyone can start.
And it's incredibly multifaceted. It touches on so many different skills and areas of knowledge.
The benefits go way beyond just making fiction or games. It genuinely seems to help you learn, think creatively, understand people better.
Yeah, develops that systems thinking, self-expression, lots of good stuff.
The guide ends with this really evocative line, framing world building as like an invitation.
An invitation to be what?
To be a god, setting the rules.
Yeah.
A historian, documenting the past. A scientist, figuring out how things work. An artist, bringing it to life.
Wow. That's quite a description.
Yeah, it's presented as this act of, like, expansive play, but also really focused care and attention.
Whether it ends up as scribbles in a notebook or a massive online wiki.
Or even physical maps and models you make. It's your space to create.
And that final thought they leave us with.
Mm.
It's pretty powerful.
Which one?
Don't worry about doing it right. Just build. The world is waiting.
Yeah. That really cuts through the potential anxiety, doesn't it?
It does. It makes you think, okay, if I'm not worrying about doing it right, what would I build? Where might you, listening now, start building today?